My sister's husband wanted to join him on an all-male holiday to Ibiza. My bill said that all straight guys do this and that I was homophobic for not understanding when I said no. Hello, I wish I didn't have to write this post, but I must. My spouse and I have been blissfully wed for around 16 years, give or take that time. Despite the high expense of living in the UK at the moment, we both have steady jobs, happy families, and are generally lucky. We thought we had it pretty nicely until last Sunday. Our two boys are 10 and 15. Naturally, we disagree occasionally, but it never gets out of hand. I won't go into that, but we have a very good sex life with some experimentation. In summary, my husband asked me if we had the home to ourselves on Sunday after I dropped our boys off with their friends. Do I have a minute? More importantly. Yes, I replied. He then sat me down, pulled out this printed ad for an orgy, and began to explain what a gaycation was. How straight men travel somewhere with their sun, sand, and alcohol, and end up turning homosexual for the length of the trip. However, because it doesn't really count, that's okay. Because whatever occurs during a vacation remains there. I was shocked and utterly quiet when he mentioned that he was considering taking his sister's husband, Bill, to Ibiza the following year so he could see it for himself. I just asked him to clarify if he was gay when he eventually gave me the opportunity to speak. Because if so, that's fine. But we need to decide what to do next. I was just in awe and didn't allow myself to become angry or irritated. He repeatedly declared that he is not homosexual, that he is completely attracted to women, and that he still loves me and our boys. I said, "Do you think you're bi, maybe?" And he became extremely angry, stating that I should stop making the allegations and that the gaycation is great because it lets straight folks feel gay without becoming homosexual. He compared it to visiting an aquarium. He reiterated that he doesn't find men's body or genitalia particularly fascinating, but it seems like he needs to experience this. I said, "Even if he were bi, I'm not really at ease." He became irate and reaffirmed that he isn't, saying that's the beauty of the gaycation, etc., even though this would be overtly cheating on me. I simply gave up and walked out of the room. For the remainder of the day, I ignored him, but we did talk at tea, and I questioned him once more why. If he is not homosexual, he wants to do this so badly. Unfortunately, once the gaycation starts, it's hard for a guy to resist. He must give his mind, body, and soul to the gaycation or perish, he said, adding that he's interested in how gay men's lives differ from those of straight men. It was so weird that I just cannot describe it. Because of his matter-of-fact tone and his repeated insistence that this is a common practice among straight males, even though he's a little late in doing it. I just told him that the marriage would end if he continued to do this, and that he couldn't do it if he loved me. We stopped talking after that. He hasn't spoken about it since. But in some way, and this is what really worries me, that choice appears to be ripping him apart. He told them that he just felt too sick, and that he always looked upset when I saw him, so he didn't report to work on Monday and only worked half a day yesterday. Though I can definitely believe he's bi, I don't think he's completely homosexual. Nevertheless, I'd prefer that we discuss it in a constructive manner rather than with this really strange denial about taking a sex vacation to Ibiza. Does anybody know of any straight men that do this? Return, and simply resume their straight lifestyle? As if that couldn't possibly be a real thing. I simply don't know how to start the discussion, and I'm completely out of my element here. For the record, I haven't told his sister about it yet since I'm not sure how I would even break the news to her. I appreciate any assistance. Getting this out there has helped, even if only somewhat, since I don't want to think about it. Edit, this really took off. I believe I've now verified what I previously thought to be true, and this has been really sobering. Either way, the marriage is dead. I was, in a sense, denying that to myself. When I first called my SIL, she yelled at me, accused me of lying, and even said that I was attempting to take her husband. Shortly after, she called me back, apologized, and acknowledged that she was in extreme shock. I've asked my parents to watch the boys, and tomorrow we'll get together to talk more about this. In addition, I contacted my husband to let him know that he would not be staying here tonight, and that a bag would be available for him, but that he would need to find other lodging. I believe I have my answers, but I'm not sure whether the moderators want to lock the thread. I appreciate all of your nice remarks, especially from Champion Flight, who provided me with the much-needed dose of reality. Commenter 1, your spouse isn't suggesting a gaycation, to which OP has responded. He's suggesting that you cheat on him with guys while acting as though it doesn't matter by employing magical thinking. It's even more unsettling because he's organizing this with his sister's spouse. His strange justification for giving up one's body, mind, and soul isn't a straight man's curiosity. This person is frantically attempting to defend his sexual exploration while maintaining his straight marriage. Missing a vacation isn't the reason for his unhappiness at not being able to travel. It has to do with having to face his sexuality without using the easy justification that, What happens in Ibiza stays in Ibiza. His outburst about not attending demonstrates how much he wants to escape this fact. Oop, I've read this several times and I suppose the worst thing is that I know you're absolutely correct. I wanted to avoid the divorce option, but I suppose it's the only one, isn't it? Oop should think about getting a divorce. Also a commenter. This is only a notion, but I'm curious as to whether he truly intended to go on the gaycation, or if it was a ruse to acquire your consent. What if he was actually down there to have sex with women? Oop, I hadn't given the TVH much thought. And now I'm afraid of the notion. He had a billboard promoting a homosexual orgy, which is obviously a huge bluff given the way he was discussing males. Tell him, commenter 3, that you will have a straight cat eye, and that you will give your mind, body, and soul to other men while he is away. To be really honest, I would utilize my husband's vacation time to prepare for my divorce by packing, moving out, and preparing the necessary paperwork. November 28, 2024, as an update. I had informed my husband that he wouldn't be staying at home tonight, and that a suitcase would be waiting for him when I last blogged. We argued, as you may imagine, very terribly. I won't get into the specifics, but I'm completely okay with him being bi at the very least. Perhaps even homosexual. Although we've had disagreements in the past, I've never saw him act so immaturely and yell that I don't comprehend the gaycation, and implying that since I denied him the opportunity to engage in this cultural interaction with the LGBT community, I am in fact homophobic. Many of you advised asking him if it would be okay if the roles were reversed, and I did ask if it would be okay if I went out and had sex with other men that week. Fucking clockwork, he was upset and furious, claiming that it's entirely different since a gaycation is meaningless, and that whatever that occurs there stays there, etc., therefore it doesn't really count. In contrast, I would be outright dishonest. I flipped it on him though. No, but, as you can see, Manchester is where things stay the same. It has little significance and is not taken into account. It's similar to observing birds, and I believe it reached him. He became very silent before breaking down in tears. He acknowledged that the idea of me having sex with another guy was breaking him heart, but he also said that partnerships require sacrifices, so he decided to give me a week in Manchester to do as I pleased while he went on his gaycation. He doesn't want me to, but he supposes that's fair in a perverse sense. I urged him to leave my home. Fortunately, he departed without a struggle. He couldn't attempt to use it against me since I also depleted the joint bank account, which is permitted in the UK. I realize this is really petty. An hour or so later, his mother, my mill, called me and yelled at me, accusing me of being a whore who cheated, saying I was terrible, asking about the children, and so on. After regaining my calm, I simply responded, "Ask your son about the gaycation." She was obviously upset at first, but I told her to ask him about the gaycation and he would explain. However, she called me a fucking joke and hung up. Later, as the evening wore on, God received another heartbreaking phone call from her, accompanied by tears. She apologized profusely, but I informed her that she didn't have to do it herself. She called Phil because she was so distraught, and even though he seemed calm, I could tell he was on the warpath. Once more, he apologized profusely and claimed to have heard the word. He questioned my husband, who at first replied it was nothing, before going on to explain that it's a modern thing for males to do, etc., and gave them the same rundown on what occurs during a homosexual date. The gaycation is irresistible to men. The way a man has to give in to the gaycation, etc. They ordered him to go or they would call the police, Phil said, and they didn't care where he went as long as he didn't remain. Phil simply said he was really sorry for me and that they had my back, so that's one thing. My husband tried to contact me while I was on the phone, but I just ignored it. Advised them to support their daughter because it seems like Bill is involved, something their husband failed to disclose. And Phil just stated that he was so furious that he had to leave. After the strangely rambling phone chat, I received a text from my spouse, claiming that I had misused the gaycation to ruin his marriage and his life, and that I and his parents were bigoted for doing so. Blocked his number and told him we'll communicate when he's older. I lost £500 since I took a day off work to have the locks changed this morning, but at least I know he won't be returning. We'll continue when I investigate the best course of action for the divorce. Of course, the brother-in-law is also involved. Thus, I have not yet met Sils_. She was in such a situation, and for reasons that will become evident shortly, she has become far worse than I have. We may try again tomorrow, but we did chat on the phone, and I overheard her talking to her spouse. She placed her phone on speaker, and I put it on mute. She had her husband come home after he had arrived earlier, explained that there was an emergency, and simply asked him, "Could you please explain what a gaycation is later?" She confided in me that she hoped he would appear perplexed, or just say anything, or something like. Nevertheless, he just sat her down and explained that a gaycation is a new phenomenon, in which straight guys visit gay hotspots and engage in homosexual sex practices nevertheless. It is not considered a gaycation, because there is no investment and what occurs during the gaycation remains on the gaycation. He compared it to writing down and storing furious thoughts in a drawer. They are never to be seen again. SIL is crying the entire time while he calmly reiterates my husband's arguments about it not counting, including the "it's impossible to resist, you must surrender or be destroyed" nonsense. Really, I feel like they're talking to a dominatrix or something. Do male doms exist at all? Since none of them is interested in this enough to come up with it on their own, surely? For her sake, I really don't want to share what was talked. But it became clear to me that the Bill enjoys sissy hypno-porn and occasionally confused it with the idea of agitation. He says, so sincerely, so matter-of-factly, that for most men, and SIL is crying uncontrollably as she tries to make sense of this very strange scenario. The gaycation can be yearly or one time, but some men utilize mind control and hypnosis to become completely feminized into a condition of perpetual pseudo-gayness, and other men go on the gaycation for years. Surely if you're willingly taking it up because you want to, that makes you gay, she remarked incredulously. No, he said. Because that's the good thing about gaycation, you can do all this gay stuff. But you don't interact with the wider gay life experience. When she inquired whether he wanted the sissy things, he said that he didn't want it long term and that all straight guys do it, but she wouldn't get it because she's a woman. After then, there were additional homophobic hints. I guess that marriage is also dead. He answered, no. I don't need to make this choice because the beauty of the gaycation is that it allows me to keep my marriage because it doesn't count and the whole situation came to an end when she told him he had a choice to make. That's not the decision, she explained rather. It's whether he or she leaves the house that evening. The only wise thing he did was to go. After that, SIL and I talked about it, and I'm still in complete shock. I am aware that she has turned to her parents for help, but what precisely did we do to cause our lives to be abruptly, strangely, and embarrassingly destroyed? In order to get some guidance, I'm going to examine gadgets and bank records to hunt for any concrete evidence of dishonesty. I guess I'll have to think of a way to explain to the boys why their father won't be returning home after that. Edit, I talked to additional SIL members of my husband's family, including his younger sister and elder sister, and I gave her a condensed version of the original SIL. Fortunately, when she confronted her husband, he was very perplexed. However, he then revealed that 2 years prior, during a birthday celebration, my husband and Bill had contacted him about attending an online boot camp about BDSM cross-dressing. He told them to fuck off since he believed they were taking advantage of him, and he never gave it any consideration again. I feel like throwing up because of how long this has been going on. The fiancé went on to say that my brother could only attend the wedding before revealing his intention to send him away after the wedding. However, I reared him because our parents died when he was 5 years old. I'm 30 years old, engaged to my 3-year partner, and 2 months along with my first pregnancy. For some background, see James 31. My parents gave birth to my baby brother when I was 15 years old, and 5 years later, when I was 20 and Matt was 5, they were driving home when they were involved in an accident that killed my parents. I was horrified and utterly destroyed after the accident. But in order to be there for my brother, I had to gather myself. The next month, I buried my parents, and with my aunt and uncle's assistance, I sought for guardianship of my brother. It took almost 7 months for my application to be accepted. In order to get my brother's guardianship, I had to have a steady job that paid well, which I did, as well as appropriate housing for both of us, which I accomplished by purchasing a house and other little items with money from my inheritance. Working while taking care of my brother was challenging at first. It's now simple, though there are still challenges, but I would do it all over again for my brother. I met my fiancé at a party when I was 27, and we clicked right away. After 3 months of dating, he asked me to marry him. At first I declined since I still had my brother to support. But after some consideration, I accepted, and we decided to wait until we were financially secure. Since I was pregnant at the beginning of this year, we wanted to get married because I didn't want my child to be born out of wedlock. We began the preparations, and the wedding is scheduled for October, but based on what transpired on Saturday night last week, it appears that there won't be a wedding. We argued and worked through a lot of problems. For instance, my brother's birthday fell on the wedding date that my fiancé had requested. I wanted to throw a big party for my brother's 14th birthday, so I offered the week after. We argued, and he even ran to his mother to try to persuade me, but I refused, saying that my brother's birthday is important to both of us. There was some more fighting, but we eventually came to an agreement. Next came the parts I wanted my brother to play in my wedding. I first gave him the position of best man, but he insisted on having his closest buddy instead, so I said all right. I then called ring boy and he would bring the rings up to us while holding them on the little cushion. However, James stated that he wanted his nephew, so I answered, okay, and walked away. I thought it was adorable when I saw this TikTok video on Saturday morning in which the bride asked her male best friend to be her man of honor, so I brought it up to him. My brother was at his friend's house for a sleepover on Saturday night, and I was in the kitchen when he got home. As he walked in, I exclaimed, "I have the perfect role for Matt." I thought he may be my man of honor. But then both wedding parties came out as couples, and then they came out as singles. What am I doing? He is a guy of honor. It would be nice if I called him my brother of honor. That can't work since I thought you wanted my sister to be your maid of honor. I never consented to this, and I would like my brother to be included in my wedding. I was considering having him sit in the rows as a guest. I was so taken aback by him that I wanted my brother to attend my wedding, not just be a guest. He wanted to sideline my brother, and I was at a loss for words. His whole family participated in the wedding in some capacity, and the most of my bridesmaids were his cousins, just two were close friends, yet he was unable to give me this. When he began to say that his sister was better, and that my brother would be a guest, and that he didn't want kids in the wedding parties, I lost it, and began to argue with him about everything. I stopped what I was doing and told him no, it was also my wedding, and I wanted my brother to be my man of honor. He hasn't been home since Saturday, sending his brother to retrieve some of his belongings. His mother and sister have been bombarding my phone, but I'm a self-centered lady, so it doesn't matter whether my brother is a visitor. The last time they called, it was on a Wednesday night, and I used language I'm ashamed of to get at both of them. I ended the call by saying, "Yes, my brother is more important than him in this wedding if it's happening, and I will never put him in front of Matt." And I apologized, asking James to get in touch with me so we could work things out. Update: Hi everyone, I apologize for not updating it sooner. I was really busy at work, canceling all of my wedding preparations and getting Matt ready for sports camp. I want everyone to know that James and I split up, and that I will not be getting married to him. James messaged me on Friday, the week after I had published my first piece, requesting to meet and speak. I only agreed to meet if I could choose the day, which he did. I chose Sunday because I knew Matt wouldn't be home all day, so I told James. He arrived with his mother around noon, and I was surprised when I opened the door to let them in. They sat in my living room for a few seconds without saying anything, which made the situation even more awkward. James then apologized for leaving and said he needed time to think. His mother then began criticizing me, stating, among other things, that I wasn't behaving like a prospective wife and that I should consider what my future husband would think. "I'm disappointed in you, my name. You're getting married, and you should stop behaving this way toward your future spouse," she said me. After scoffing at that, I went to James and asked him what was wrong with my brother. He said it had more to do with my attention to him than with him. He said he wanted a life with me and the unborn kid, but not with Matt, as he sat there silently for a long. He went on to say that after the wedding and the birth, he hoped to persuade me that it would be difficult for us both to raise a baby and a teenager, and that it would be best for me to send Matt to live with my uncle and aunt, but that he would still let me provide for Matt financially. I felt complete disgust for him at that point. I was so astonished that I apologized before he said anything further. But he said, "No, this isn't happening, and my brother isn't leaving," after stating that both he and his mother rose up and argued that I didn't have to do that. I got up, removed the ring, gave it back to him, and told him it was over. "And I will regret this," he said, sobbing and pleading with me to reconsider my words. I just approached the door, opened it, and motioned for them to go. After a few minutes they went through it, James sobbing and begging while his mother swore at me. Later in the evening, his mother and sister called me on my phone and cursed at me.